So our very first turnover here, first page is actually not from this sketchbook. These are sketches that I did in a previous one when I was first learning watercolor, before I'd ever attended school, just doing some online class things. If anyone's familiar with New Masters Academy, Art Mentors, Proco, all those things, exploring some options and what you can do learning wise from home. I was doing that while having a different job at the time. And when I decided that I didn't like that sketchbook, I cut out a few of the ones that I did like. And I'm a big fan of Red Pandas. I'm working on a personal project with them. And then I was studying composition really heavily. So you got some things where I was going to the zoo, Columbus Zoo, painted an iguana from there. And then some fantasy composition stuff that you just try to create out of your head in a few minutes. Pasted these inside the sketchbook because I felt like they were worth saving and I was kind of attached to them. So, and first actual entry, trees. Being in Ohio during the summer, there's a certain look of the sky. It's blue, and it's very difficult to try to get really quickly. But I tried two different scenes here. So you see the blue is done first, entirely one sketch. And this is gouache with maybe an underdrawing, probably not, just going straight in. Little thumbnails and ink first, maybe doing both at the same time, and I just said whatever. This was actually done last, this left side. So you've got a regular daytime pick, and then you had me being indecisive and deciding to do one right before the sunset ended, and you had a certain pink glow to the sunset there. And again, you'll see me flipping more than one page at once because I'll show you what I please, not guys don't get to see everything. So more trees. This is also from Ohio. Gouache paint here, and maybe a mixture of watercolor, mostly gouache. Prefer Winsor Newton as a whole. Ink is a massive part of my process. So using ink lets you not erase and think harder about your marks. These things that are going on here is trying to get a gesture, studying S-curves, trying to see how things start and stop. All of these things are very quick, maybe 5 minutes each. This tree right here was me just trying to create depth, getting used to the gouache paint on this paper. This paper can take water, but I wouldn't get too excited. Gouache worked much better than just straight up really heavy water usage. So if you're using a traditional watercolor, that's very diluted, and this might not be the paper for you. On the go, works great. I'm very into illustration, so I'm constantly messing with kind of visual stimulus. These things that you're seeing here is just kind of a mix leading your eye through a page. Some text leads us to the right side. We tend to drop down and look at this lighthouse right here. This is just ink, and then some Copic markers I've never used before. Little lighthouse scene, and then we have text at the bottom. Text is a very important thing to pay attention to if you're going to use it. It draws an enormous amount of visual, it demands a lot and can pull away from what you're looking at very, very easily. Comic book artists and comic covers and people used to movie poster design, they would intentionally leave space in certain areas for that writing, and the writing had to be a certain font, a certain size, and in a certain place to make sure that you still receive the image properly. Simple things like this is a good exercise to consider those points. Figuring out a sketchbook is easy if you just give it a couple minutes. And the gray paper on this was actually amazing for showing some of the colors I could get in gouache. And all of these are just regular Winsor Newton gouache, designer's gouache. Just seeing 3 different values I can get of each color: the regular color, a little bit of white, mostly white. You can see how far these colors pop off the page immediately. It's really great. You have way more usage in gouache if you want, if you just don't dull it. And again, the inks are a big deal. Sometimes it's ink first. You'll see some ink lines underneath here. And then over top of that, I added some color. Some of these are from life. You know, one of the dogs sitting in front of me, I just grabbed his ear really quick. He's like laying on the side. His ear was sticking straight up in the air. Caught my attention. And this is probably the most well-known sketch from this sketchbook right here. The Ohio Wildlife Association in Ohio takes in, you know, your lost animals, and if you're gonna call anybody, they're a great place. You find strays and you know, injured wildlife around. They're the ones that are nonprofit. They're gonna help you try to figure out what is the best route. This was an injured screech owl that they had there, and I got to go take photos. A great friend of mine let me go take photos since she worked there. And this sketch was always a big deal. There was another one I always wanted to do, and I never made it there. But reference photo, a gesture line inside of my rectangle to figure out where I would place it. I wouldn't want the eye directly on the center line because it would take too much. So I put it just off to the side, just barely off to the side of the center in the middle here. And that's some things that help you move through the entire image better than just moving straight through it. Outside the Philadelphia Museum of Art, giant statue out front with a number of these stags placed around the bottom of that waterfall right there. So this is before you get to the steps. And just a quick sketch that day, and you can see me putting a gesture line. We were really heavy on gesture at the school I attended, so I've got this one in the center, and I take it through the kind of middle through the head where the neck would be, right down to the end, and then I continue with a couple other pieces of shadow afterwards, and you can see that's from February 3rd, and I've never forgot this sketch because it was cold as shit. I kept it in here, didn't cover it up because I had to wear gloves when I drew it, and that was a first. I'm really happy how it turned out wearing gloves. Oh, this was a fun one. There was a dog I used to pass every day named Cherry Blossom Eleanor. She had 3 legs, and this will be one that I end up continuing later as well, but I just had to get this head in. And I was always going to draw the back side of the body, but the rest of this photo actually got ripped in my bag one day. Unfortunately, I was carrying a book that was too heavy. It ripped the rest of this. She only has 3 legs, so I wanted to show just an incredibly happy animal with, you know, they have 1 less leg, and they could care less. You know, they're just as happy as they can be. And one of my little pride and joys here, my red pandas, I got an opportunity to go feed some at the Columbus Zoo, and it was the best time. It was so much fun. I took hundreds of photos, and I started making some characters out of them. So I remember sitting on a plane back to Ohio from Philly and getting into this. Yeah, just didn't have anything else, so just a regular blue pen. Messing around with a lot of storytelling for the years during COVID, a lot of time to kill, as we all did. So, you know, figuring out these kind of ideas and philosophies, like I moved to Philadelphia to get something and to discover and go for something new in my life. And so you can notice discovering every day is a blessing. You just don't get to choose what you're discovering. Curiosity can get you some rare treats in life, but be afraid of her tricks. So curiosity is one of those things that, you know, you accept and follow at your own risk. This is mainly what I was doing when I was in Philadelphia. This is most of what I would go to Rittenhouse Park, and I would sketch couples just people walking around all the time. Probably the most influential part of my studies was going from life all the time. You can see my ink marks underneath. Most of this is brown ink. And just trying to get this perspective correct. I wanted that really heavily. The gesture of the body, leaning in. Zero time for a face. You have no idea how long they're going to be there. A couple minutes after this, they definitely just sat backwards, and he put his hat over his face, and that was it. I mean, he just laid there and acted like he was asleep. So you don't have very long to get this. I inked it all, the gestures really quickly in less than 10 minutes, and they were moving back and forth. At the very end of this, he put his arms over. He was sitting, leaning backwards, and at the very end, he leaned all the way forward, and I was like, perfect. So I grabbed that in like a minute or two, and as they were laying there, I could just take the colors of their clothing and place it into what I had already drawn. The background actually came last, so the figures were the only thing that I was worried about afterwards. The background went in to help some of the values and colors stick out. Sometimes you fail. Rittenhouse, another one, 4 people. I started wanting to do a lot of multiple figure compositions, so I was trying to draw multiple people at once. And a lot of time you don't need multiple people. This guy is just as colorful as it could have been. Just big guy, strange haircut, definitely not his natural haircut by any means. Loudest shirt you could imagine, and strange glasses all around. Those characters you can't ignore. Some ink and watercolor, Rittenhouse Park, and this was, looks like 9/12/2020. You can't do much outside around then, so people were going to the park. Yeah, this is right where the fountain is. If you've ever been there, you know this statue well. And always trying things out, experiments everywhere. So this was just a very large tree that's here, and I always wish that I kind of continued this one. I'm always kind of bummed out I never did finish it, actually, and it's kind of rubbed out a bit, so I need to redo this. But just a regular tree with a girl sitting underneath talking to her friend, and then a guy walking his dog right here that I never finished, and I really wish I'd gotten back into these. Unfortunately, that's maybe a chance I can do later. James Gurney has a wonderful color mixing exercise here to see what your palette is capable of. You choose 3 separate colors, and then you try to find the range between them. And it's a nice little prism exercise he has there. People in Rittenhouse Park all the time. You often see me try something without using the pencil or pen first. This is one of those results there. Some people on a bench. This guy had 2 different poses at the same time. He had a dog with him, so first the dog was on his lap and he was sitting here and I couldn't see much, and then he puts the dog down, stands up and leans down over and kind of tends to the dog a little bit. So I took 2 torso positions and made them work the way that they work. One of the best parts about the park, we would often set up at just any random bench that's open. You don't often have your pick when it's such a highly populated city, densely populated city. So you'd sit, and every now and then in the center, some people would just set up shop and start playing music. So if I'm not mistaken, this was a girl with her instructor. She was very young, maybe in high school or so. And her instructor here, very high considerable age difference. They looked nothing alike. They just sat down and started playing together. And maybe father-daughter duo, I don't know. She would take breaks, and when she would put it down, she would just lean back. So I was hoping to get both, which is, you never know how much time people are going to spend in a position. So you start a few, and hopefully it'll pan out for yourself. But I really wish they had sat longer. It was very cold that day. Again, experimenting with writing. I was describing things that were around me, talking about, the schizophrenic homeless, um, taking a knee every time that he walked by a girl, basically. It's kind of crazy. This guy was smoking a cigarette, looked really interesting. Oh man, one of the greatest part of the changing seasons in the city is there's not much like beautiful scenery, in my opinion. Cities are very gray, and they're not like all that like impressive to look at, I guess. I don't usually enjoy that almost at all. And the ginkgos, though, were exceptional because the blues that you can get in Philadelphia is really amazing. Right next to the waterfront, the air is always moving. You don't have a whole lot of stuck humidity and particulates in the air like you would get a big haze around as if you were drawing in California or some other areas like that. But the ginkgos are amazing, and the colors that they change into are really, really exceptional. Pressed up against the reds and the blues like that, I mean, you see some amazing things. More writing. This is an important one. This one was actually probably the first time I've ever drawn something extremely emotional from memory, and I've always wanted to do a bit of a catharsis series that'll happen later when I have the time and the means to just do whatever I like. This is immediately after a car accident when I was about 16 years old, and we got hit on this opposing side that you can see here. So we didn't get hit on this side, we got hit on the other side by this car, and it was at a stop sign. We were actually driving straight through here. They hit us flying. He didn't stop. We only had the stop sign. We left, came straight through, and he T-boned us and swung our car around all the way to this side. And I'll never forget that the stop sign was folded underneath the car. So that's why I drew this, and we're trying to place it correctly to where it looks like it might work. And the thumbnail is actually better than a few of the other finals that I've tried so far, so that'll be something that happens later. Some bird failures, and some other fun birds here. Nothing too crazy, just quick finch sketches. They were everywhere at Rittenhouse Park at the time. Really, really everywhere at the time. In Rittenhouse Park, there were tons of finches, so. All right, and you can see we follow into the next spring here. The finches are out, it's breeding season, and they're all just on the lookout. And everywhere, and I could take some seeds with me, and they would eat the ones that I put out for them. And this is about March 4th, 2021, so we followed into the next spring from where I was at. And then just some stuff from life. You start to combine things and just see random things. This was actually a dog that I saw holding a ball, trying to play with something else. I only had time for this, and then later I thought it'd be fun if it looked like he was playing with a red panda. So I drew a red panda there instead, as if they were playing with each other. I used to sit and draw at dog parks all the time, since I've done a lot of pet portraits. This person was literally just standing there stretching out each leg for a long time, and I was like, that's interesting. You don't see people, most people are just standing regularly in any random spot. So decided to switch to that, and that was just good life drawing exercise stuff. Let me get to probably the last page that was marked on was actually right here, and that ends up being just a regular page like we did in the very beginning. In the very beginning, we had these that I pasted in from an old sketchbook. This was one that I pasted in from that same one as well. And this one always meant a lot to me. It was a good learning experience, being out traveling all the time. It fit in my bag, convenient size, and that's pretty much everything I would do at that time during my learning. So thanks for watching.